that people who have been Republicans their whole lives suddenly are like, you know what? We like tariffs all of a sudden.
Donald Trump came in, and I agree. He didn't do it traditionally. Very disruptive.
These tariffs were not reciprocal, right? They were gigantic and they were worldwide. So that's not a...
All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let me just say this. This is where Anna shines, right? We're going to look at this little spar real quick. You know what I mean? Like, we'll look at this spar really quickly between Anna and Spicer. But the thing that the point of this is, again, for me to show you that Anna Kasparian shines on her own. So I don't understand why she made this move. So she's back on TYT for a couple. I want to know how they're working this out. I do. Anna's barely on TYT. That's why I was like, oh, she finally left. She finally left. Anyway, we're going to get into it. So this is Anna Kasparian. She's groveled back. She's back on TYT, getting attention. And I think that she's really going to see that the grass is not always greener. We'll look at this little quick interview with Sean Spicer, a grifter, but whatever. Hey, you know, shout out to him. He got his bag, whatever. He worked hard to get his bag. You do what you need to do. Let's go ahead and get into it.
I don't like the term, but since it's colloquial, I think they weaponized Project 2025 like never before. But this has been around on both sides going back at least a few generations.
So I get what you're saying, Sean. I mean, I'll give you a specific example that bolsters the point that you're trying to make. So the current Trump administration, the DOJ under the Trump administration, has chosen to continue the Biden administration's effort in preventing the banning of the abortion pill, for instance, which was something, that Project 2025 certainly wanted to do to make it even more difficult on a national level, national scale for women to decide to terminate their pregnancies.
But by the way, this is the conservative perspective to The View, right? That's what Anna represents. Look, I didn't make it up, by the way, guys, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you to every eye that lands on these videos. Now, I didn't say this. This is what, what's that guy's name? PBD is presenting his new show as a conservative answer to The View. This woman wants pills to be mailed to people so that they can terminate pregnancies. You know why I cannot stand when these people have these conversations? It's like, would they make it harder for people to get... Yo, man, you ever heard of something called hemorrhaging? Okay, when I found out that people can get this thing, like, and I'm trying to be careful with how I talk about this because we already know this is YouTube. When I found out that people could get this product in the mail, or just go get this assistance, if you will, this pill to end the life inside of them, I thought this was the most dangerous thing, because to me, I'm like, you could slip that to somebody else. People don't understand the side effects. I know I've heard of people like bleeding all the way out and not stopping. You have to understand everything. They don't even know how the body works. Oh, they're not making it easy for people to do this thing. Whatever happened to condoms and abstinence, right? But she's the conservative perspective to The View, That's why these things are a sham to me. Like, I just can't.
So that was good news. If you're on the left, that the DOJ under Trump has decided to continue the Biden administration's fight to continue making the abortion pill accessible. And that goes against what Project 2025 wanted. The question that I want to ask you, though, really has to do with what has happened to the Republican Party and the Republican Party's identity under Donald Trump, because I'm sure he doesn't really care about what the status quo was for the Republican establishment. He's willing to go in and kind of screw around and, pursue policies that historically were more aligned with what the Democratic Party wanted. So, for instance, the tariff policies.
Trade, exactly.
Trade
right.
is a good example. So what do you really think about his trade policies? Because I'm not buying for a second that people who have been Republicans their whole lives suddenly are like, you know what? We like tariffs all of a sudden. What are your thoughts?
It's a fantastic question that you're asking, and you couldn't be asking it to a better person, because I was the assistant U.S. trade rep under George Bush. So I espoused some of the policies that we had been given. And I'll give you a great example. So I wasn't like a trade wonk or anything like that. I'm a communicator, and I got brought into the U.S. Trade Rep's office to help communicate the trade policy. And I advocated for several multilateral deals and several bilateral deals. But we've been told forever that that's just how things were. And so I'll give you a great example. I walked into the Oval Office, I don't know, first couple of weeks, and the president said, I think I want to renegotiate NAFTA. And I wanted to sound like a cool trade wonk. And I said, well, Mr. President, the agreement's in force, because that's the technical legal way that you describe a trade agreement. And he looked at me and said, I don't care. And I said, well, sir, with all due respect, it's in force. And he said, it's not a good deal. We're screwing our dairy farmers. We're screwing our auto workers. The IP, the intellectual property provisions are way out of whack. And I said, well, that's true. And he said, well, then why wouldn't I, as president of the United States, advocate for better policies for the American people? And I thought to myself, well, that kind of actually makes sense. But I guess the answer to your question is, for the longest time, we've just been told, well, this is the definition of free and fair trade. Mm-hmm. And when President Trump started to say to you, well, really, is that really fair? That the EU is charging us 30 or 38% or whatever it is, that the UK is charging us 10, and we have the lowest tariff and non-tariff barriers in the world? Why is that fair? Mm-hmm. Why is that how a friend would treat another friend when everyone talks about them being our allies? And frankly, people like me that had been free trade advocates for years said, you know what? He's actually got a point there. And so I think that the point that you're bringing up is fantastic, because for so long, the orthodoxy had been, this is the definition of free and fair trade. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump redefined it for us and said, why is that fair? Why is it fair that a country like India has 100+% tariff plus massive amounts of non-tariff barriers that don't allow our whether it's our ag producers, our pork producers, our beef producers, our service providers, our manufacturers to come into their market? Why is that fair? How is that how another ally should treat another ally? So, and you reflect on it for a moment and you go, you know what? It's not.
So I actually think, you know, some of the targeted tariffs that Trump implemented in his first term were great. I mean, the targeted tariffs on some of the products coming out of China were so good that Biden kept them in place and even expanded upon them. And so he does deserve credit in those areas. However, you know, his announcement on Liberation Day was so jarring. You know, you have that baseline 10% tariff on all of our trade partners. And then he hit a bunch of our, you know, allied countries with astronomical tariffs. And the argument, well, we've heard a number of different arguments, right? The two main ones being, well, this is the art of the deal. It's meant to be so jarring that our trade partners, you know, come to the table and renegotiate these trade deals for, you know, a fairer deal for American manufacturers and producers. But then there's the other argument of, no, we actually just want to bring jobs back, manufacturing jobs back to the United States. That's what this is really about. What is your read of the situation?
So, and like she does, they would never, and I don't even need to watch this whole 25 minutes to know that Anna is never going to talk about Larry Fink and BlackRock being the reason why we started off with this tariff thing where it's supposed to be everybody. By the way, you could have two things. It could be that you want to negotiate better tariffs by getting jarring, by going for broke, like just going gangbusters, while also bringing back manufacturing, if this was being done for the right reasons. No, instead, they dropped the tariffs on everybody else. They kept them on China. That is for BlackRock with that C.K. Hutchinson deal. I talk about it all the time. So go ahead. When you look it up, you'll see what I'm talking about. She's not here to ask those kind of questions. This is what I mean about so-called independent media, too. She's part of the Peter Thiel connection. How she's going to ask questions like that? That doesn't make sense.